Hello, this is just a quick addendum to video 2 that covers using the Boolean. In the past, Cinema 4D terminology was Bool for the tool. They've changed the name to Boolean. And then since I made the video in 2024, they also fundamentally changed the features available in the Boolean tool. And I think they changed it for the better, but I want to do this little video to kind of show those differences so you can continue watching the longer form one, but have knowledge of like why this looks different than it does on your screen if you're using a modern version of Cinema 4D. So we're going to create a cube really quickly, and we will just go ahead and create a second cube. We're going to move that second cube over, up, and back a little bit just so they're offset to make it easier to see what we're going to be doing. And then the bool, or Boolean, as is the full term now, is available under that subdivision surface icon. We're going to go down, select Boolean, and just as we do in the other video, we're going to go ahead and make both cubes children of the Boolean. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to select the Boolean, and you'll see that if you've used previous versions of Cinema 4D, there are a lot fewer checkboxes down here, right? And there's a couple other options here. We're not going to deal with selections right now because that's not covered in the other tutorial, and I just want to go quickly through this. So they're under the Object tab here, right? There are a few options. There's Operation, Resolve Self-Intersections, and High Quality Normals. So to start with the operation, the default operation is union, which means it's basically gluing these two objects together into one cohesive whole. The other option that we use a lot in the tutorial is subtract, right? Where now if I rotate my view, you can see that I've actually taken that chunk out of there, right? Works the same way it did previously. Intersect, right, is only going to show where the two objects intersect. And then without is going to be showing, right, essentially a hole in the other object, right? So there's no geometry there, it's just empty, and you kind of get to see on the inside of the object. That can be really useful in certain cases. We're going to go ahead and keep it set to subtract for now. And so then there's these two options here. Now, as a reminder, if you ever need to know what something does in Cinema 4D, you can actually select the text and you right-click and go to Show Help. And it will give you, and in this case, a very good explanation of what it's doing and why it does it, right? And so this is all under there. That's fantastic. We'll just go through it verbally right now. So previously, and this is something that impacts the most recent tutorial pretty heavily, is that when you had multiple objects that were acting as one object, like say you were to use the cloner or the array tool to create multiple copies of something, and you wanted those multiple copies booled or like removed or united with or whatever another object, there were times when major issues would occur. And so I want to show you the issue, and then I want to show you the fix. And this is on by default. But we're going to go ahead and uncheck Resolve Self-Intersections. And we're going to pull one of these cubes, the one that's being subtracted. We're going to go ahead and pull that out of our geometry, and we can just go ahead and delete it. And then we are going to use the cloner. And I cover the cloner in the later tutorial. Cloner is an amazing tool. But we're going to just select our cloner, make sure we're in the Object tab, go down to the grid mode. We're going to make that radial. Then we are going to go ahead and create a sphere. And we are going to make the sphere a child of the cloner, right? So now we have all of these spheres, and you can see that they are actually intersecting with each other right now. So in the old Boolean, it didn't have this resolve self-intersections option at all. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to cloner. We're going to make this the second child of the Boolean. And I want you to note, right, when I'm doing parent-child stuff, the line gets a little longer if I'm actually dropping it below in the hierarchy. But if I'm actually making it a child, that line will be shorter, right? And that now it's there, and suddenly everything has disappeared except for this one weird polygon, right? And that's the issue we're encountering here. So let's go ahead and make our spheres smaller. I'm going to select the sphere. I'm going to go ahead and set the radius to just a 20. And now you can see that I have my cube has returned to the world. I'm going to turn the Boolean off temporarily. And you can see now, because I've made these so small, they're actually down below this cube. So I'm just going to move these. Oh, I'm not going to select the sphere. I'm going to select the cloner. I'm going to move the cloner over. I'm going to move this up a little bit. And actually, what I might want to do to make it easy to see is we're just going to lift this up until it pops through the surface of the cube. So it's just a little bit easier to see. And then I'll recenter my view. Zoom in just a touch to make it easier for you all to see. Okay. So, right, so these are intersecting this top surface. If I turn the Boolean on right now, there's no issue, right? If you select the Boolean, you can see I still have this unchecked, no issues whatsoever. But as I increase the radius of the sphere, watch what happens, right? You can see suddenly, once I get to a certain point where they start intersecting, things go really, really wonky and bizarre, and suddenly they all disappear if I get to a big enough radius, right? So this is how it used to operate, and it was, you know, ugly. It was a hideous result. So let's go ahead and actually let's go to our sphere and let's set the radius to 50, because I know that that's going to mess everything up. And then I'm going to go back to the Boolean and I'm going to check resolve self-intersections, right? And so now I've resolved self-intersections and you can see it's acting the way I would like it to act. And now I've got this result that's looking significantly better. Now, one of the other things they've added here is this high quality normals. I want you to look at the shading here and you'll see how it's kind of weird, right? There's some strangeness happening in the surface there. And that's because the way it does the math and everything to resolve these surfaces, it also is working with the Phong tag on the objects, which basically is like smoothing that gets applied to the geometry. There end up being like errors or things that happen in that process that create this like weird surface. So if I actually check mark high quality normals, right, you can see that that cleans it up really, really well, right? And so this is something that I think takes a little bit more processing power to do. But if you have a surface and those artifacts are on there, this is the checkbox you want to check. You know, for a lot of objects, you don't need that, and that's why it's off by default. But for things like this, it very much needs to be done. And sometimes you'll have something where, like, let's say you wanted a really smooth sphere intersecting a faceted sphere and you want to merge those together. What high quality normals does is it respects the Phong settings for each object. And so in this case, that's not something that's easy to like test, but you could essentially remove the Phong tag or change the values on here to get a more faceted appearance on the object, and then you can get that to resolve, but we're not going to worry about that today. Okay. That is the addendum that I wanted to do. Pretty simple, but it's just it's just a lot less options. It's a little bit more clear, and I would say it's also a lot more useful.